In the farthest reaches of the Valerian expanse, where stars stretched like shards of glass against the black velvet of space, the Corvith armada moved with silent precision. Their ships, sleek and angular, reflected the cold efficiency of a race that had ruled the galactic corridors for centuries. At the helm of this unstoppable force was Admiral Zyrek Vol, a figure whose reputation had become legend across countless systems. His face, sharp and unyielding, was a mask of authority. His eyes, pale and calculating, missed nothing. Every officer, every pilot and every engineer aboard the flagship Ecliptor knew one truth. Zyrek's word was law, and failure was a concept they had learned to fear. Yet even among such a disciplined fleet, whispers of unease occasionally surfaced. Today the expanse felt different. A subtle tremor, almost imperceptible, rippled through the void. Sensors aboard the Ecliptor registered minor anomalies, dismissed by the crew as insignificant fluctuations. Still, Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox, a young officer barely a year out of the Academy of Stellar Tactics, could not shake the feeling that something was off. He had served under Zyrek before and knew that the Admiral would not acknowledge uncertainty unless it was undeniable. Kael'thar stood at his station, fingers hovering over the console, eyes scanning the void. "Admiral," he said cautiously, his voice steady despite the growing tension, "I'm detecting something. I can't identify it, but it's moving with intent. Sensors are picking up energy readings inconsistent with known vessels." Zyrek, who had been reviewing strategic data on the central holographic display, barely glanced up. "Stray energy fields. Space is full of anomalies, Lieutenant. Unless you see it firing weapons, it is of no concern." Kael'thar felt a flicker of frustration. "Sir, with all due respect, this doesn't feel like an anomaly. Whatever it is, it's massive. And it's approaching at a speed that defies standard propulsion models." Zyrek's pale eyes met Kael'thar's, and for a brief moment the calm, imperious facade faltered. "And you think the fleet isn't prepared for it?" he asked, voice a low rumble. "We have destroyed enemies larger than our own cruisers, Lieutenant. I've faced storms far more formidable than any human vessel." Kael'thar hesitated, the words caught in his throat. He knew better than to challenge Zyrek openly, yet a gnawing instinct whispered that this was different. Outside the armored hull of the Ecliptor, the fleet glided through the silent void. Stars reflected off the ship's obsidian surfaces like distant fireflies. Space, usually serene and eternal, now seemed charged with anticipation. Sensors pinged faintly, detecting fragments of cosmic debris, remnants of systems long dead, drifting silently. Yet beneath the familiar patterns an unfamiliar energy signature pulsed, a subtle heartbeat in the darkness. Among the bridge crew unease grew. The communications officer, Saren Lyre, adjusted her headset, frowning. "Admiral, there's an energy signature on long-range scanners. It's unlike anything in our database. It's massive, singular, and moving toward us deliberately." Zyrek's fingers tapped against the console, a rhythm that betrayed impatience more than concern. "Maintain course. Keep all ships at maximum readiness, but do not engage unless provoked. I will not waste resources on a ghost." Kael'thar watched the readouts, feeling the knot in his stomach tighten. His training told him one thing, but instinct screamed another. This was no ordinary threat. The energy signature had coherence, intelligence. It moved with purpose. It was not a rogue asteroid, not a drifting vessel. It was a predator. Hours passed. The expanse remained deceptively quiet, the void itself a canvas of cosmic serenity. Crew members attempted routine checks, maintenance cycles and system calibrations, but the tension lingered like an invisible fog. Even Zyrek, stoic as ever, occasionally paused, staring at the distance where the anomaly's faint energy signature glimmered against the dark. On the observation deck, Kael'thar allowed himself a moment of reflection. Beyond the reinforced glass, stars stretched infinitely, their light centuries old. Planets orbited unseen, and nebulae painted the darkness with swirls of color that defied description. Yet beneath this beauty lay the harsh truth of the galaxy. Power determined survival. And something was coming that threatened to redefine that power. The young lieutenant felt the weight of responsibility press upon him. He had grown up on tales of human ingenuity, stories dismissed as myth by the Corvith elite. Humans were considered primitive, incapable of posing any real challenge to the Armada. Yet, the energy readings he now observed hinted at a reality far different from legend. Kael'thar wondered, what if the myths were true? What if humans had advanced far beyond what anyone had imagined? Zyrek's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and commanding. "Report." Kael'thar turned, fingers flying across the console. The object is now within 5 light minutes. Energy output is off the charts, shields or some equivalent technology far beyond our specifications. And it's approaching in formation, not random trajectory. The Admiral's expression hardened. All vessels go to battle stations. Shields at maximum. Weapons charged. I do not wish to underestimate this anomaly. A tense silence followed. The fleet, usually a testament to Corvith dominance, now felt fragile under the invisible pressure of the approaching unknown. Crew members adjusted their helmets, checked their controls, and exchanged glances heavy with unspoken apprehension. Kael'thar returned to the observation deck. The energy signature grew brighter, larger, more defined. Whatever it was, it moved with confidence, almost as if aware of its own power. The calm that had dominated the fleet was evaporating, replaced by an awareness of vulnerability, an emotion rare among the Corvith. Minutes stretched like hours. Each ping of the sensors, each subtle vibration through the hull, reminded the officers that the unknown was drawing near. Then, without warning, the shape began to resolve itself. Against the backdrop of starlight, a silhouette emerged, massive, angular, and unlike anything the Corvith had ever encountered. Kael'thar's voice was barely audible. "Admiral, it's a human warship." Zyrek froze, the words landing like a physical blow. He had heard stories, dismissed rumors, but now, staring at the immense vessel moving with undeniable authority, even his seasoned mind wavered. The calm before the storm had shattered. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented, and the Corvith armada stood at the edge of its own insignificance. In that silent, frozen moment, one truth became unmistakable. Whatever came next, nothing would ever be the same again. The vast darkness of the Valerian expanse had always been a realm of uncertainty, but never before had the Corvith armada felt such an electric tension ripple through the void. Every officer aboard the flagship Ecliptor felt it, a shiver running through the hull as though space itself had grown aware of the approaching presence. Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox gripped the edge of the observation panel, eyes glued to the distant shape now resolving from the darkness. "Admiral, it's getting closer," Kael'thar said, voice tight, betraying both awe and fear. Admiral Zyrek Vol leaned over the console, scanning the holographic readouts. His jaw clenched. "By the core stars, it's massive. Larger than any vessel we've catalogued. Kael'thar, activate long-range sensors. I want a full structural and energy analysis." Kael'thar's fingers danced over the controls. Streams of data flooded the displays, but the readings defied logic. The hull integrity of the approaching vessel exceeded any known Corvith alloy. Its energy output was off the charts, pulsing rhythmically, almost as if it were alive. Shields? Weapon systems? Propulsion? All unknown, all terrifyingly advanced. The human warship loomed larger with every passing second. Against the pinpricks of distant stars, it was a silhouette of raw power. Its lines were clean but uncompromising, an elegant combination of form and function. Unlike the jagged, weaponized spires of Corvith ships, the human vessel radiated confidence. It moved as though it belonged to the void, unafraid, untouchable. Kael'thar swallowed hard. "Sir, it's beautiful in a way. And deadly." Zyrek's face, usually an unyielding mask of control, flickered with something unfamiliar, concern. "This is no ordinary vessel. This is war incarnate. Humanity, they've surpassed every expectation." The fleet stirred, alarm sirens quiet but persistent, as the distant silhouette began to take shape. Smaller craft swarmed the edges of the human ship, almost like escorts, but each moved with precision that no Corvith pilot could match. Even the seasoned commanders aboard the fleet began to whisper among themselves, the fear barely masked. "Admiral, the human vessel isn't responding to standard communications," reported Saren Lyre, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "Attempts to broadcast identification have failed. It's ignoring us entirely, moving straight through the designated neutral corridor." Zyrek's lips pressed into a thin line. "So it comes prepared to ignore our protocols. Very well, let's see how they handle our welcome party." Orders echoed through the fleet. Energy weapons charged, torpedoes loaded, shields brought online at maximum capacity. Yet even in the midst of preparation, a sense of futility crept through the bridge. Kael'thar felt it most acutely, a gut-level understanding that this was a force they had never encountered. Then the first glimpse became undeniable. As the human vessel drew closer, the faint glimmer of its hull revealed intricate panels of unknown alloys, interwoven circuits that pulsed with energy, and weapon ports that emitted faint glows of concentrated power. There were no visible turrets like the Corvith preferred, no cumbersome missile launchers. Instead, energy conduits ran along its frame, seemingly ready to strike at any point without hesitation. Kael'thar's hand hovered over the console, trembling slightly. "Sir, they're weapons. They're integrated, adaptive. I don't even see turrets. Everything is connected to their systems as one. It's alive." Zyrek's pale eyes narrowed. "Alive? Yes, in a sense. It fights as an organism. Not like the machine creatures we deploy. This is something else entirely." As the human warship approached, the first wave of sensors returned data that made even the Admiral's stomach twist. Energy readings fluctuated not randomly but rhythmically, almost as though the vessel itself were breathing. Shield outputs adjusted in real time, countering the Corvith scans with near-perfect efficiency. And then, it happened, the first direct observation. A cluster of Corvith drones, dispatched as a warning, moved into firing range. In a heartbeat, the human vessel reacted. Energy pulses flared along its hull, enveloping the drones in a shimmering barrier, disintegrating them before they could even lock on. The bridge of the Ecliptor fell silent, all attention riveted to the display. "Impossible," Kael'thar whispered. "Shields that react instantly, weapons that anticipate movement, it's like it's thinking ahead of us." Zyrek's voice was low, almost a growl. "Do not underestimate it, Lieutenant. This is not a ship. It is a predator. And we are the prey." The human warship continued its advance, unrelenting, moving toward the center of the Corvith formation. Each vessel in the armada attempted to position itself strategically, but it was already clear. The humans anticipated their maneuvers. Drones and fighter wings sent in standard assault patterns were met with precise, almost surgical countermeasures. Kael'thar's eyes widened as he noticed something subtle yet profound. The human ship did not merely respond to attacks, it exploited weaknesses. Shield harmonics, propulsion patterns, energy signatures, all were analyzed and countered in real time. Even Zyrek's seasoned mind could not predict the next move. The sense of inevitability that settled over the bridge was suffocating. Suddenly, a transmission from the fleet's intelligence wing broke through the tension. "Admiral, incoming visual feed. You need to see this." Zyrek turned sharply as the screen displayed the approaching human vessel in full detail. It was immense, dwarfed even the Ecliptor, yet it moved with grace. Its hull shimmered with layers of adaptive shielding, energy conduits coiling like the veins of some cosmic creature. The Corvith officers stared, speechless, as the realization struck. Humanity had crafted something beyond the Corvith understanding, beyond the limits of their arrogance. Kael'thar whispered, voice shaking, "Sir, their technology, it's superior in every way. They've taken the void itself and made it their ally." Zyrek's fingers drummed against the console. "Yes, and that is exactly what makes them dangerous. They are unbound by our limitations, unrestrained by our doctrines. We have faced countless foes but none like this. None." For the first time, the calm that had dominated the fleet vanished entirely. The Corvith, proud and unyielding for centuries, felt the creeping tendrils of fear. Every officer aboard the Ecliptor knew in their hearts that they were witnessing something extraordinary, something that could decide the fate of entire star systems. The human warship was now fully visible, a monolith of power and purpose. Kael'thar's breath caught. "They're not attacking yet. Just observing, assessing." Zyrek's gaze was hard, but beneath it lay the first flicker of respect. "Humans," he muttered, "they fight with more than strength. They fight with intelligence, strategy, and perhaps, pride." As the two fleets drifted closer, the silence of the void was broken only by the hum of engines and the occasional sensor ping. Every officer knew, this was the moment history would remember, the first true glimpse of humanity's might. Kael'thar felt a mix of dread and awe. "Sir, their approach, it's deliberate. They want us to see them. To understand the scale of what they are." Zyrek nodded slowly. "Yes, and in that moment our fate is sealed." Even as the words left his mouth, the Corvith armada braced for the storm. The first glimpse had shattered all illusions of superiority. Humanity was not just a contender, it was a force the galaxy had not seen before, and the armada would never forget this day. The stars of the Valerian expanse seemed to hold their breath, waiting to witness the clash that would follow. The calm, tense air of the Corvith fleet had already begun to fray, and now the realization came like a cold shock through every officer aboard the flagship Ecliptor. The human warship loomed closer, its presence undeniable, its power unquantifiable. Every sensor, every scanning device, every experienced eye confirmed what Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox had feared since the first glimpse. The humans were not only formidable, they were unstoppable. Admiral, their energy readings, Kael'thar began, voice shaking. I've never seen anything like it. Their shields, their weapons, their propulsion. It's beyond our understanding? Zyrek Vol finished the thought grimly. His usual icy composure had cracked. He turned from the console to survey the fleet, eyes narrowing. Yes, Lieutenant. That is exactly it. Beyond understanding, beyond prediction. They are evolution made flesh in a warship. The fleet around them, once a picture of rigid discipline, now buzzed with tension. Commanders whispered to each other, exchanging uneasy glances. Ships that had routinely obliterated enemies now hovered cautiously, their formations faltering as uncertainty gnawed at the edges of their confidence. The human warship was not advancing recklessly, it was calculating, observing, waiting. Kael'thar's fingers hovered over the console, tracing the movements of the human vessel. They're analyzing our fleet, every maneuver, every firing pattern. Every weak point we have, they know before we even think to exploit it. Sir, we can't hide from them. Zyrek's voice was low, almost a growl. I know. I see it. We are exposed. Vulnerable. And worse, they do not hesitate. They understand the consequences of hesitation, and we— His words trailed off as he stared at the distant silhouette of humanity's warship, now looming like a mountain against the black expanse. Suddenly, a ripple of activity spread across the fleet. The Corvith scouts detected subtle fluctuations, energy spikes that indicated the human vessel was activating some kind of scanning field. Kael'thar's console erupted with alerts. Every ship's systems were under observation. Every tactical maneuver, every shield modulation, every propulsion adjustment, it was being catalogued. Sir, they're reading us. Every single parameter, Kael'thar said, voice tight. Every weapon we have, they'll know how to counter it before we can fire. Zyrek's jaw tightened. So, we are predictable. We have relied on strength, on precision, but we are predictable. And now, against an opponent who does not merely react but anticipates, we are at a disadvantage unlike any we have faced. A warning tone cut through the bridge. Another Corvith vessel at the outer perimeter had been disabled by a precise energy pulse. Not destroyed entirely, yet, but incapacitated, systems frozen, leaving the crew helpless. The pulse had been measured, calculated, perfectly contained, and then withdrawn without further damage. It was a statement. We are aware of you and we decide how and when to strike. The effect on the fleet was immediate. Panic began to simmer just beneath the surface. Ships that had once stood proudly in formation now jittered, adjusting positions defensively. Officers barked commands over the comm channels, but hesitation and fear had crept into their tone. Kael'thar's hands trembled as he adjusted the displays. Sir, they're not attacking full force yet. They're testing us. Every move we make, every shield adjustment, they're observing. Zyrek's expression hardened. It doesn't matter. Observation is a weapon when the observer is superior. They understand war in ways we cannot anticipate. They can see our future moves and they are preparing. One mistake, and it will be the end for all of us. A sudden flash on the main screen froze the bridge. A Corvith destroyer had attempted a standard torpedo strike, a tactic that would have obliterated any other opponent in seconds. The torpedoes streaked forward, but the human warship reacted instantly. Energy pulses shimmered along its hull, absorbing the attack without a flicker of strain. Then, in a movement too fast for most human eyes to follow, the vessel redirected a subtle wave of force toward the destroyer, crippling its engines and leaving it spinning helplessly in the void. Impossible, Kael'thar whispered. They didn't just defend, they countered, and controlled the trajectory of our own weapon. Zyrek's voice was cold, but the underlying tremor of realization could not be hidden. This is no ordinary opponent. They do not react, they dominate. Our tactics, our training, they are obsolete against this. The realization hit like a hammer across the fleet. They were outmatched. Not in numbers, not in coordination, but in sheer mastery of war itself. Every Corvith officer knew it in their bones, though pride made them reluctant to speak it aloud. For centuries, the Corvith had believed themselves unmatched, ruling star systems and crushing every foe. And yet, here they faced humanity, something entirely unexpected, something terrifyingly effective. Kael'thar glanced at the distant human vessel, illuminated faintly by the cold starlight. Sir, if they wanted they could destroy us all within minutes. Every ship, gone. Zyrek nodded slowly, his face pale but resolute. Yes, they could. But they haven't. Not yet. They are teaching us a lesson. Showing us what it means to face humans in their prime. The Corvith fleet began to shift defensively, moving into tighter formations. Shield harmonics were synchronized, weapon systems adjusted to predicted trajectories, yet even as every precaution was taken, the human warship advanced. Every ship felt the oppressive weight of inevitability. Kael'thar's gaze locked with the Admiral. Sir, what do we do? How do we survive this? Zyrek's expression was grim, yet there was a flicker of admiration buried beneath the dread. We survive by recognizing the truth. Humans are not like any enemy we've faced. They fight differently, think differently. This is the reality of the galaxy now. We have been shown our place and we must adapt, or perish. A ripple of dread swept through the fleet. Even the most seasoned Corvith pilots, warriors who had faced the Void's deadliest phenomena, felt a cold certainty. Humanity was a force unlike any other, and their fate hung by a thread. Kael'thar whispered almost to himself, "They're perfect. Not in a machine way, but in every decision, every movement. They know what to do before we even realize it." Zyrek exhaled slowly. Yes, and that is the final lesson of this encounter. Never underestimate the humans. For in this moment, our arrogance has been shattered, our certainty replaced with humility. And yet, he paused, eyes narrowing at the human warship, there is something admirable in it. Something worthy of respect. The human vessel hovered silently, massive and imposing against the void, its sensors sweeping through the fleet, assessing every vessel, every weapon, every strategy. The Corvith realized fully, the humans were not merely fighting, they were studying, anticipating, preparing for a victory that seemed inevitable. Kael'thar felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Sir, our fate is sealed. Zyrek's voice was calm, almost a whisper, but it carried through the bridge like a decree. Yes, in that moment we understood the truth. Humanity has arrived. And the galaxy will never be the same again. The silence that followed was deafening. The stars stretched endlessly, indifferent witnesses to the dawning realization that the Corvith Armada, masters of the void for centuries, had met their match. In the black expanse of space, one lesson became clear. Humans were no longer to be underestimated. Their ingenuity, strategy, and audacity had shattered an empire's certainty. And the first glimpse of their might had irrevocably changed the course of history. The silence of space shattered like glass as the human warship unleashed the first true demonstration of its might. The Corvith Armada, once confident in their supremacy, now faced a force they had only begun to comprehend. The void seemed to vibrate under the sheer presence of humanity's vessel, its energy systems humming like a living entity ready to act. Admiral Zyrek Vol slammed his fist against the console, commanding the fleet with a precision born of decades of experience. All ships full offensive. Target the forward hull of the human vessel. Focus fire and maintain formation. Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox adjusted the targeting arrays, sweat beading on his forehead. Sir, our weapons, they're not even penetrating the shields. Every pulse is absorbed, then redirected. Zyrek's eyes narrowed. Then we adapt. Adjust torpedo trajectories to random vectors. Overload the shields on multiple angles simultaneously. The Corvith launched wave after wave of plasma torpedoes and energy beams, but each strike fizzled against the shimmering barrier of the human warship. The ship's hull rippled with adaptive shields that not only absorbed the attacks but seemed to anticipate them, redirecting kinetic and energy outputs in precise counter patterns. The Corvith officers watched in horror as several of their cruisers were caught in backwash effects, their shields destabilized by the redirected energy, leaving them vulnerable. Kael'thar's voice cracked. Sir, they're using our own attacks against us. Entire sections of the fleet are exposed now. Zyrek's jaw clenched but his mind raced. Focus on survival. Protect the outer perimeter. We will not be destroyed in chaos. From the observation deck, Kael'thar's gaze followed the human warship's movements. It did not move like a conventional battlecraft. Instead of advancing in predictable vectors, it flowed through the void, evading clusters of torpedoes, anticipating trajectories, and striking critical weak points with surgical precision. Energy beams lanced out from the human vessel, not in a broad assault but in exact, calculated strikes that crippled propulsion systems, weapons arrays, and command nodes across multiple Corvith ships simultaneously. Saren Lyre, monitoring communications and fleet status, called out sharply, "Admiral! The destroyer Sarah, this has lost engines and weapons control." The cruiser Valor is critically damaged. They're dismantling us piece by piece. Zyrek's normally unflappable demeanor showed the first signs of strain. Do not panic. Focus on coordination. Target them together. Synchronize your attacks. Kael'thar swallowed hard, watching as the human warship effortlessly shifted its orientation in space, sensors glowing faintly like distant stars. The precision of the maneuvers, the fluidity of attack and defense, was almost inhuman. Every Corvith offensive action was met with preemptive countermeasures, every formation disrupted, every assumption shattered. This is impossible, Kael'thar whispered, turning to Zyrek. They're not just reacting, they know what we'll do before we do it. Zyrek nodded grimly. Yes, humans fight with intelligence we cannot predict and courage we cannot measure. They have transformed warfare into an art form. They are unstoppable. A Corvith frigate, attempting a flanking maneuver, fired a volley of high-velocity torpedoes. The human warship tilted slightly, and with a subtle pulse of energy, the torpedoes were deflected harmlessly into space, detonating at a safe distance. Even as the crew on the frigate cheered, the human vessel retaliated almost instantaneously. Energy lances, invisible at first, struck the frigate's engines, immobilizing it, leaving it adrift, a drifting monument to the human's tactical superiority. Kael'thar's hands clenched the edge of his console. Sir, they didn't even need to destroy it. They just stopped it, controlled it. Zyrek's eyes were ice. Yes, control, not destruction. That is the difference. Humanity does not merely fight, they dominate the battlefield, shaping it to their will. On the Ecliptor bridge, alarms rang incessantly. Each Corvith ship under their command was being systematically neutralized, not annihilated outright but rendered ineffective. Shields were breached in minor ways, weapons jammed, engines destabilized. The human warship's attacks were precise, calculated, and terrifyingly efficient. Kael'thar could hardly believe his eyes. Sir, they're almost teaching us how weak we are. They're showing us our mistakes in real time. Zyrek's gaze never left the holographic display. Exactly, Lieutenant. And in doing so they make a statement. This is not just battle, it is a demonstration. A warning. Humanity has arrived and we are the first to feel its force. The fleet's morale wavered. Ships that had once been confident, aggressive, unstoppable instruments of war, now moved with hesitation. Officers who had trained for centuries found their instincts failing. Every attack met with futility, every strategy countered, and every expectation shattered. Even Zyrek, with decades of battlefield experience, felt the weight of reality pressing down on him. Humanity was not only a threat, they were a revelation. They had transformed the very concept of war into something beyond comprehension. Kael'thar's gaze remained fixed on the human warship. Its movements were not chaotic, yet no Corvith could predict them. It advanced, assessing, testing, dismantling, but never fully committing to annihilation. Every strike was precise, almost surgical, highlighting the weaknesses of its opponents without unnecessary destruction. Saren Lyre spoke quietly, almost in awe. Sir, they fight with purpose. Every strike is intentional. Every defense calculated. This isn't just war, it's mastery. Zyrek's voice was low, measured, but edged with admiration and fear. Yes, and mastery is what makes them dangerous. Power without intelligence is destructive, but intelligence without mercy, that is something we cannot overcome. The human warship's sensors glowed brighter, its energy systems humming, almost as if it were aware of every Corvith maneuver. Then, in a sudden display of overwhelming force, it unleashed a concentrated wave of energy toward a cluster of Corvith cruisers. The pulse was precise, immobilizing 3 ships instantly while leaving minimal collateral damage. The fleet watched in stunned silence. Kael'thar whispered, voice barely audible, Sir, they're not just winning, they're rewriting the rules of engagement. Zyrek nodded slowly. And in that rewriting they show us our place in the galaxy. We are no longer the apex. Humans, they are the storm we cannot outrun. The clash continued, a deadly dance of strategy and power. Corvith ships fired relentlessly, adapting as best they could, but every move was anticipated. Every formation disrupted. Every advantage exploited. The human warship moved through space like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction, each action precise, elegant, devastating. For the first time in centuries the Corvith armada felt fear, not for themselves individually but for the legacy they had built. Their empire, their dominance, their unchallenged supremacy, all of it was being questioned by a species they had long underestimated. Kael'thar exhaled slowly, eyes wide as he witnessed the relentless, controlled might of humanity. Sir, we can't beat them. Not like this. Not ever. Zyrek's voice was grim, almost reverent. No, Lieutenant. We cannot. But remember this, we are seeing history in motion. Humanity is the storm. And we are survivors of its first wave. The stars of the Valerian expanse bore witness to the clash, silent spectators to the confrontation between centuries of Corvith dominance and the unstoppable ingenuity of humanity. In that moment, the Corvith knew one undeniable truth. The galaxy would never be the same again. The Corvith armada floated in stunned silence, the void around them a chaotic dance of energy bursts and shimmering shields. For hours they had witnessed the unmatched precision of the human warship, and yet it had not obliterated the entire fleet. It was a paradox, devastating in power yet almost disciplined. A new emotion spread among the crew, awe. Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox stood at his observation panel, mouth slightly agape. Sir, it's incredible. They're not just destroying us, they're teaching us. Every move we make, every attack they respond, not just to counter us but to demonstrate strategy, intelligence, purpose. Admiral Zyrek Vol rested his hands on the console, fingers curling around the edge as he surveyed the fleet. His eyes, pale and calculating, flicked between the holographic displays of the human vessel and his own failing ships. Yes, intelligence combined with raw power. Courage. Discipline. Adaptability. Humans fight differently than anything we've known. They are extraordinary. Kael'thar turned back to the observation panel, eyes following the movements of the human warship. It glided through space as if aware of the Corvith's fear and hesitation, striking precisely where defenses were weakest, avoiding unnecessary destruction. It was unlike anything Kael'thar had trained to anticipate. Their tactics, their instincts, their formations, none of it mattered. Sir, they're not just fighting to win, Kael'thar said quietly, almost in awe. They're showing us what war truly means. Their courage, it's inspiring. Zyrek's lips pressed into a thin line, a flicker of admiration visible for the first time. Yes, that is the key. Humans do not merely rely on technology. They rely on ingenuity, on instinct, on audacity. That combination is lethal. And terrifying. Even as the fleet struggled to regroup, small acts of human strategy became impossible to ignore. The warship anticipated missile trajectories, absorbed torpedo volleys with energy fields, and redirected energy surges in ways that protected vital systems of the fleet, but only for the Corvith they intended to study. It was an unspoken message: we understand you, we respect you, and we are testing you. Saren Lyre, scanning the tactical displays, whispered in disbelief. Sir, the humans are disciplined. They're precise, efficient. Even their strikes against our fleet seem almost considerate. Zyrek's voice was low, reverent, tinged with both fear and admiration. Considerate, yes, but lethal. Every strike has a purpose. They fight with intelligence, and that intelligence makes them unstoppable. Kael'thar's thoughts drifted to the human stories he had once dismissed as legend. Tales of ingenuity, courage, and determination had been passed down through generations, often laughed off by the Corvith elite. Yet now, seeing it in action, he understood. Humans were not just surviving, they were mastering. Every movement of their warship was calculated, every maneuver designed to expose weaknesses without unnecessary loss of life. Sir, they're showing us that we're predictable. That we rely too much on brute force, on arrogance, Kael'thar said, voice barely audible over the hum of failing Corvith systems. Zyrek's eyes narrowed, a mixture of realization and respect settling across his pale features. Indeed, humans fight with thought and courage. They calculate risk, exploit opportunity, and execute flawlessly. That is what we face. That is the greatness we have underestimated for too long. Even as Corvith ships attempted to adjust, to form new tactics, the human warship anticipated each movement. It flowed through space like a predator, adaptive, agile, and intelligent. It struck with precision, yet left enough of the fleet intact to learn from them. Each incapacitated vessel was a lesson, a warning, and a demonstration. Kael'thar leaned closer to the observation panel, awe and fear warring in his mind. Sir, they're almost showing mercy. They could destroy us completely. Every one of our ships could be reduced to debris in moments. Zyrek's voice was steady but with a rare softness. Yes, they could. And that is what makes their courage astounding. They are confident in their power, yet measured. They do not destroy recklessly. That is the mark of intelligence and honor. As the battle continued, small moments of brilliance became clear. The human warship engaged multiple targets simultaneously, striking with surgical precision at weak points, redirecting energy flows to maintain its own shields, and predicting counterattacks before they were even launched. It was not simply reacting, it was orchestrating. Kael'thar's eyes widened. Sir, it's like they see the future of the battle, every potential outcome, and act accordingly. They are beyond anything we've imagined. Zyrek exhaled slowly, a mix of awe and reluctant admiration. Yes, humans fight not only with weapons but with intelligence, courage, and foresight. That is why they are dangerous, and why we must survive this encounter to tell the tale. The Corvith crew began to feel a strange emotion, not fear alone but awe. Even seasoned officers who had fought countless battles, conquered entire systems, and faced threats the galaxy had feared could not deny it. Humanity was different. They were not just powerful, they were extraordinary. Kael'thar whispered almost to himself. They're not just fighting, they're proving something. Showing us that humans are capable of things we cannot predict. They're remarkable. Zyrek nodded, his gaze fixed on the human warship. Remarkable, yes, and that is the truth we must remember. Humanity fights with courage that is unmatched, with intelligence that cannot be calculated by our sensors, and with ingenuity that defies understanding. They are the storm we cannot stop and the force we cannot ignore. Even as Corvith ships limped through space, systems failing, shields flickering, the human warship moved methodically, almost with respect for its opponents. It did not destroy unnecessarily, but it left no doubt of its superiority. It was a lesson in strategy, courage, and the relentless spirit of its creators. Kael'thar exhaled, eyes wide as he watched the vessel glide through the battlefield. Sir, they've changed everything. Not just this battle, everything we thought we knew about war. Humans, they're incredible. Zyrek's voice was calm, resolute, but carried the weight of centuries of experience finally humbled. Yes, Lieutenant. Incredible. And terrifying. That is the essence of this encounter. Humanity has shown us their courage, their intelligence, and their supremacy. And in that moment we know, we are witnessing history. The stars of the Valerian expanse shimmered coldly in the background, indifferent observers to the drama unfolding. The Corvith had faced countless threats, yet never before had they seen courage and intelligence combined with such overwhelming precision. Humanity was no longer a story or a legend, it was real, present, and unstoppable. Kael'thar whispered, voice tight with awe, Sir, I think I understand now. Humans, they're not just fighters. They're something greater. Something the galaxy hasn't seen before. Zyrek's gaze never left the human warship. Yes, and that is the lesson of this battle. Courage, intelligence, and mastery combined. That is what makes humanity a force to be reckoned with. And we are privileged to witness it, even as our fleet suffers the consequences. The Corvith Armada, once proud and unyielding, had learned a humbling truth. The human spirit, embodied in their warship, was a storm unlike any they had faced. It was not just the power of weapons, but the courage, the ingenuity, and the precision behind them that made the humans unstoppable. And in that moment, every officer, every crew member, and every soldier understood the same truth. The humans had arrived and their place in the galaxy was now undeniable. The Corvith Armada, once confident in its dominance, now drifted through space in disarray. The human warship loomed before them like a monolith of inevitability, its presence a constant reminder of how futile resistance could be. Energy pulses radiated across the void, precise, controlled, and devastatingly effective, incapacitating ships without unnecessary destruction. Each strike, each subtle adjustment, demonstrated a tactical mastery that no Corvith commander had ever witnessed. Admiral Zyrek Vol stood at the central console, fingers gripping its edges as he surveyed the fleet. Even with centuries of experience, even after countless victories, he had never felt such helplessness. Ships he had commanded with absolute certainty were failing before his eyes. Shields flickered. Engines faltered. Weapons systems malfunctioned. And through it all, the human warship advanced, patient, deliberate, and terrifyingly confident. Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox stared at the main display, his voice barely a whisper. Sir, they're dismantling the fleet systematically. Not just destroying it, analyzing it, disabling it, teaching us our weaknesses before striking decisively. Zyrek's gaze hardened. Yes, and that is exactly what makes them formidable. Humans fight with intelligence, strategy, and precision. They are not merely machines of war, they are the embodiment of calculated courage. Even as the Corvith attempted to regroup, The humans anticipated every maneuver. A squadron of Corvith fighters tried to flank the human vessel, firing volleys of plasma and energy missiles. In an instant, the human warship deployed a subtle yet powerful energy field, redirecting the volleys harmlessly into space. The fighters were left adrift, engines failing, shields destabilized. The move was almost casual, yet it demonstrated an unparalleled command over the battlefield. Kael'thar's hands trembled on the console. "Sir, they're almost playing with us. Every strike, every defense, it's deliberate. They're showing us the difference between power and mastery." Zyrek's eyes were icy, but beneath the surface was a flicker of something he hadn't felt in decades: respect. Indeed. Humans do not merely fight, they dominate. And in their dominance, they reveal the truth of their superiority. The Corvith fleet's attempts to form new strategies were futile. Ships tried to create overlapping shields, focused fire, synchronized attacks, but each measure was anticipated, countered, and exploited. The human warship moved through the void like a conductor leading an orchestra, each action purposeful, each response flawless. One by one, the Corvith vessels began to falter. The Cerithus, a destroyer of unmatched firepower, was crippled by a single energy pulse that shut down its engines and jammed its weapon systems. The Valor, a heavy cruiser, had its shields destabilized and its propulsion systems rendered unreliable. The human warship did not destroy indiscriminately, it neutralized selectively, leaving a skeleton of the fleet to bear witness to its calculated supremacy. Kael'thar whispered, voice tight with awe, "Sir, they could destroy us completely. Every ship could be gone in moments, and yet, they choose precision." Zyrek's gaze never wavered from the main display. "Yes, that is the mark of true mastery. They do not act out of desperation. They act out of understanding. Every move, every strike, every adjustment is deliberate. Humanity fights not just to win, but to show the difference between thought and instinct, courage and hubris." As the fleet faltered, panic began to creep into the ranks. Officers barked frantic commands, pilots maneuvered with increasing desperation, and engineers struggled to maintain failing systems. Even the most seasoned Corvith warriors felt the oppressive weight of inevitability. They had underestimated the humans, dismissed the legends, and now paid the price. Kael'thar turned to Zyrek, voice trembling. "Sir, we can't recover. Not with the fleet in this state. We're exposed, vulnerable, doomed." Zyrek nodded slowly. "Yes, we are. But there is still value in survival. Observing this, learning from this, perhaps we can adapt. Perhaps we can survive long enough to tell the story. That is all we can do now." The human warship advanced with meticulous precision. It struck not with overwhelming force but with calculated disruption, incapacitating key systems across the fleet while leaving the rest intact. The message was clear: humans are unstoppable, and yet they choose to demonstrate their power rather than annihilate recklessly. Kael'thar's eyes widened as he watched a Corvith frigate attempt a desperate retreat. The human warship's sensors tracked it instantly. A subtle energy pulse immobilized the frigate, leaving it adrift, powerless yet unharmed. It was a lesson in control and efficiency, a statement that strength without strategy was meaningless. Zyrek exhaled slowly, a rare humility in his voice. "Observe, Lieutenant. Humans do not merely fight, they teach. And in their teaching they reveal the truth we have long ignored. We are not the apex of the galaxy. They are." The turning point was undeniable. The Corvith fleet, once confident and dominating, was now a shadow of itself. Ships drifted, damaged and incapacitated, while the human warship moved methodically through the formation. The battle was no longer about victory, it was about survival, about understanding the magnitude of what they faced. Kael'thar whispered to himself almost reverently, "Sir, they're not just winning. They're showing us what it means to be human, to fight with intelligence, courage, and mastery." Zyrek's voice, though calm, carried the weight of centuries of experience humbled. "Yes, humanity has arrived. They have shown us their power, their ingenuity, and their audacity. And in that revelation we see the end of our arrogance. We are survivors of their first wave. That is all." As the human warship continued its methodical advance, the Corvith officers could only watch in awe and dread. It was no longer a battle of strength, it was a demonstration of intelligence, strategy, and unwavering courage. The fleet that had once dominated the stars now struggled to exist in the shadow of a species it had long underestimated. Kael'thar leaned against the observation panel, eyes wide. "Sir, they've changed everything. Not just this battle, everything we thought we knew about war. Humans, they're incredible. Zyrek's voice was calm, resolute, yet filled with the rare tone of reverence. Yes, Lieutenant. Incredible. And terrifying. That is the turning point. Humanity has shown us their mastery and we are humbled. The galaxy will never be the same. The stars of the Valerian expanse bore witness to the scene, silent spectators to the dawning realization that the Corvith Armada, for centuries rulers of the void, had met a force beyond reckoning. In that moment, one truth became undeniable. The humans were not merely a threat, they were history in motion, a storm that would forever alter the balance of the galaxy. Kael'thar whispered almost to himself, "Sir, their fate, it's sealed. They're unstoppable." Zyrek's eyes remained fixed on the human warship, voice steady but heavy with understanding. Yes, and that is the truth of this encounter. Humanity has arrived. And the galaxy will remember the day the Corvith first faced them. The void of space was silent once more, but the silence was heavy with consequence. The Corvith Armada, once a symbol of unchallenged supremacy, drifted in disarray, battered and humbled. Their once proud ships floated aimlessly, some immobilized by the human warship's precise strikes, others slowly limping back toward the safety of distant systems. The battle was over, but the lesson remained etched into the minds of every Corvith officer. Admiral Zyrek Val stood on the bridge of the Ecliptor, surveying the fleet with a weight that had never been there before. His fingers traced the edge of the console, cold steel beneath his palms, yet the chill of realization was far greater than any physical sensation. The humans had come not merely to fight, but to demonstrate a truth the Corvith had long refused to acknowledge. Strength alone did not determine supremacy. Intelligence, courage, and ingenuity did. Lieutenant Kael'thar Nox stood nearby, still gripping the observation panel. His eyes were wide, filled with awe and lingering fear. "Sir, they didn't even destroy us completely. Every strike was precise, deliberate. They could have annihilated us in moments, but they didn't. They showed us what humans are capable of." Zyrek nodded slowly. "Yes, that is the mark of mastery. They could have crushed us entirely, and yet they chose to demonstrate their superiority in a way that is both terrifying and admirable. We have witnessed history, Kael'thar. We have seen the rise of a species that will shape the galaxy." Even as the words left his lips, the fleet began to take stock of their losses. Several heavy cruisers had been incapacitated, engines offline, weapons systems destroyed. Smaller vessels floated helplessly, drifting among the debris of their fallen comrades. The human warship had not destroyed indiscriminately, but it had ensured that the Corvith would never forget the encounter. Every disabled ship was a reminder of the futility of arrogance. Kael'thar turned to the admiral, voice trembling. "Sir, do you think they'll come back? The humans? Could we face them again?" Zyrek's eyes, pale and sharp, reflected both calculation and respect. "If they return, Kael'thar, we will not survive as we are. We will need to change. Adapt. Learn. Humans are not bound by our limitations. Their ingenuity, their courage, their mastery, it is unmatched. And if we do not recognize that, the next encounter may leave nothing of us to witness it." The fleet began to regroup slowly, struggling to regain formation. Systems were repaired where possible, and the surviving vessels took stock of their damage. Morale, once a cornerstone of Corvith pride, was fractured. Officers whispered in hushed tones, acknowledging the truth that had been forced upon them. Humanity was a force that could not be ignored, a species that had shattered centuries of Corvith arrogance with a single, calculated display of power. Kael'thar gazed out at the distant silhouette of the human warship, still visible against the stars, a silent sentinel of mastery. "Sir, they're incredible. Not just their ships, their strategy, their intelligence. It's beyond anything we've faced. Humanity, they're unstoppable." Zyrek's gaze softened, a rare flicker of reverence showing through his stern exterior. "Yes, Lieutenant. And that is the lesson. They fight not just with weapons but with courage, with thought, and with ingenuity. They are the storm the galaxy has not yet reckoned with. And we are fortunate to witness it, even if we are humbled in the process." As the surviving Corvith ships began to retreat, a subtle sense of awe replaced fear among some of the younger officers. They had witnessed not just the destructive power of humanity, but their intelligence, adaptability, and precision. The human warship had engaged with purpose, demonstrating mastery in a way that left no room for arrogance. Every action had been calculated, every move deliberate, every strike purposeful. Saren Lyre, monitoring the fleet systems, spoke quietly. "Sir, they fought with almost honor. They could have destroyed everything. Yet they left enough of us intact. It's like they wanted us to understand what we faced, to learn. Zyrek nodded slowly. Yes, humans are not merely conquerors. They are masters of war, and in their mastery they teach. That is what makes them extraordinary. That is what makes them unstoppable. Kael'thar exhaled, voice tinged with awe. Sir, I think I understand now. Humans are not just fighters. They're history. They're the standard against which all other species will be measured. Zyrek's eyes scanned the stars, lingering on the distant human warship. Yes, and that is the truth of this day. Humanity has arrived, and the galaxy will never be the same. We are not defeated, not entirely, but we are humbled. And in that humility there is understanding. They fight differently, think differently, and they will shape the galaxy for centuries to come. As the fleet limped back toward safe space, the void seemed to hum with the echoes of the encounter. Stars twinkled coldly, indifferent to the struggles of empires, yet the history of the battle would linger in the minds of the Corvith for generations. The lesson was clear. Intelligence, courage, and mastery could surpass sheer strength. Humanity had proven it. Kael'thar looked at Zyrek one last time before retreating to his station. Sir, the first glimpse, it's something I'll never forget. We've seen power unlike anything else in the galaxy. Humans, they've changed everything. Zyrek's voice, calm but heavy with experience, carried through the bridge. Yes, Lieutenant. They have changed everything. And we are witnesses to it. Remember this day, Kael'thar. Remember humanity. Because the galaxy will remember it too. As the Corvith armada disappeared into the distance, retreating to their own systems, the human warship lingered only briefly, a silent monument to mastery and precision. Then, as silently as it had appeared, it vanished into the darkness of space, leaving only the faint echoes of energy in its wake. The Corvith had survived, but the encounter had left an indelible mark. Fear, awe, and respect mingled within the fleet. They had faced a species that had shattered their arrogance, displayed an intelligence and courage that defied prediction, and demonstrated mastery in ways the Corvith could barely comprehend. Humanity was no longer a myth, no longer an underestimated species. It was a force that would forever alter the balance of the galaxy. Kael'thar whispered to himself, staring out at the stars. We've seen the future, and it belongs to them. Zyrek's voice followed him, steady and resolute. Yes, Lieutenant. The galaxy will never be the same again. Humanity has arrived, and all who encounter them will remember this day. This is the dawn of a new era. The stars continued their silent journey across the void, indifferent witnesses to the dawn of humanity's dominance. And in that moment, the Corvith understood a truth that would never fade. They had witnessed history, and the galaxy would never forget the first clash with the humans.